That was my first introduction to real HR policy and
Yes.
the rules that regulate, how we treat everyone in our businesses.
Mhm.
And it was amazing. We hired an HR consultant and ended up getting really amazing tools. And I'm like, holy cow, like A, our nose is wide open the whole way through,
Yeah,
but B, I don't want anyone to feel, like they're in a, not a fair place to be. But is
exactly.
that more in line? Like whoever came up with that policy that said, hey, when someone presents with this issue, with a type of issue, a health issue, this is how you handle it appropriately. Hey, we've got Erica with us. Erica, tell me, what the hell does policy mean? And how did you get into this crazy world of policy? What does that even mean to us?
I know. I feel like my life has always been built around policy, understanding how that impacted my everyday life. And even at such a formative age, from the time I can remember being in elementary school, I've always been an avid writer and reader. And very early on, I was entering essay contest and always about the details of things and being able to take something that could be so complex and really bringing it down to layman's term, to the everyday person's term, and being able to have those everyday conversations with the people in my own community. And I believe that that really is where I found my love for things, and in a sense of like reading and like policy, as you know, can be very big and convoluted and doesn't make sense to most people. And I would just immerse myself, quite frankly, in wanting to understand the complicated things. And again, very early on, I wasn't reading policy, to be clear, at kindergarten, first grade, second grade. But that curiosity is what really, I believe, propelled me. And by the time I got to high school, the thing that I realized I really loved was the Constitution, understanding like the amendments, and being a senior in high school, taking civics. And I was in an optional school, as they call it. I was in an honors program, but I also took a civics class that was non-honors just because of the way my schedule was set up. And in that class, oh my gosh, I was such a dork. Like, I wanted to know all 25 amendments. At one point, I remember my teacher telling me, you don't answer any more questions. Some of these other students aren't even doing the
That's awesome.
answer it. And that is where I could see myself like drifting into this life of public service, wanting to understand like why certain communities are struggling with this or thriving because of this. And that led me to going to school. So I graduated from Ole Miss, so the University of Mississippi, um, on the weekends in the fall, where Saturdays turns into God's country,
Yes.
and pretty incredible. And I also had the opportunity to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office as a student clerk and a paralegal intern, because my degree was in paralegal studies. And I knew at that point I would do something related to the public and like policy. Didn't know how it would all add up. And again, as this little kid, I didn't know how it would all add up. But what I did know is that I wanted to have a real impact. And we know that you can do a lot of talking, but impact at the end of the day, it happens because policy changes.
Okay. So now, since I'm a small business guy, the people listening to this podcast oftentimes are small business people. We're not talking about, the lunch break policy at ABC company. We're talking about policies of government and community and whatnot. That's probably fair to say?
Yes, initially, but I have a whole other thing about small businesses, but keep
Okay.
going.
So listen, we did like again, small business, we're 20, 15 employees. And last year we had this crazy scenario, and crazy is, whatever.
Yeah,
Um
relative.
we
Yep.
had this employee, just wonderful employee. But she just kind of started getting in her own head and kind of felt like things weren't going the way she wanted them to. And we actually had an ADA type of issue pull up. And I'm like, okay, boy, I didn't like, we made a decision. We said, hey, because of the things you're sharing personally with us,
Mhm.
boy, it's probably not a great idea for you to go to this event. And I did not know what a
No.
landmine I stepped in.
Yes.
She did, and she, kind of, used some language, and I can't remember what it's some like consultative approach or team approach of making decisions, not making decisions for someone else on their behalf based
Mhm.
on a limitation they shared. And that, I want to be fair and equitable to everybody.
Yes.
But at the same time, I was like, what the hell are we talking about? You said you had this problem. It did make sense. But that was my first introduction to real HR policy and
Yes.
the rules that regulate, how we treat everyone in our businesses.
Mhm.
And it was amazing. We hired an HR consultant and ended up getting really amazing tools. And I'm like, holy cow, like A, our nose is wide open the whole way through,
Yeah,
but B, I don't want anyone to feel, like they're in a, not a fair place to be. But is
exactly.
that more in line? Like whoever came up with that policy that said, hey, when someone presents with this issue, with a type of issue, a health issue, this is how you handle it appropriately. Is that an example of policy?
Yeah, that's a perfect example
Okay.
of policy. And that's policy not only, so that type of policy transcends, right? So we know that, like you said, with ADA compliance, with EEO, all those things start at the federal level, but that also means that it trickles down into, states have their own laws as well, along with the federal. And then when you go inside these organizations, and even sometimes local, it can have its own, kind of carve out. But when you're inside of a workplace, this is actually one of the things that I hit on with company organizations and leaders. I was like, it is not enough. I don't care if the policy is about, product innovation, actual people, humanity. At the end of the day, it's so important that policy is developed alongside the thing that you're building, whether you're building for human capital, whether you're building for this great new thing. If policy is the reactive piece, you're gonna always be behind, you're gonna always find yourself in hot water. And if you are thinking about these things on the front end, and no, you can't think about everything, but some of the basic things, if you're thinking about those things at this very basic level, then you will find yourself not only being ahead of the curve, you will also find yourself having I would personally say, a pretty darn good, not only culture, but people who want to stay because they're like, man, this company is so thoughtful. They're so inclusive. They're thinking about all the things and stuff I didn't even think about. And so I try to I take this very neurospicy brain of mine and because I'm such a visionary, I can literally see the world 10 years from now. And really, even if you're not that person, I always challenge leaders, even if you're not the person that can think like that, get someone who can. And being able to advise you along the way so that they understand you don't have to know it all, and that's cool.
Right, right.
So they understand the federal level, understand the state level, and then when things are coming inside of your actual workplace, your for-profit place, small business, big business, whatever, you are already thinking about how those policies are going to have an impact on your business. So these still matter for small business owners too.
Okay, so this is so helpful. So one of the things that like we're management consultants, we work with
Yeah.
hundreds of companies every year. Just, I've talked to thousands of business owners, helping them do things. And one of the things that happens, and I felt this happening to me,
Mm.
where as we were going through that moment, I had to kind of fight off my resentment. I'm like, well, you're just gaming it. You're just,
I can relate.
doing this. And I didn't like that feeling.
No.
But when as the industry that we serve, where I get the most exposure to people, it's you hear a lot of like, fuck California, fuck Illinois, New York's terrible. They're not employer friendly. They just serve the employee. And I can understand, that sentiment, but it's
Right.
like if your first interaction with policy is you being challenged and you not seeing eye to eye with that, boy, you could set yourself up for a mindset that you're always resentful. And I
You're
don't want
always
that.
resentful. It's impacting your brand safety. Like I always tell people who, unlike you, like you and I've had the conversation off mic about, humanity. But if you are someone that is about profit, that's how your brain works. Okay, fine. That's cool. Remember that. Like you care about your brand, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very important that you are looking at these nuanced policies around that impact the people internally. Like just because you don't have an HR policy or EEO policy inside the company, it doesn't mean that you are immune to the federal policies that still will impact your business where you're, even though you are a private company, you can still have a complaint filed
Yeah.
against you because there are mechanisms in place for these reasons. To your point about, I do see people, a lot of times employers, where to your point, it's just like, oh my gosh, like these, liberal places, all these things. But what it's really doing is, again, it's just bringing humanity back into the workplace and being able to protect people that can't afford the attorney that the employer might have on the other side, because we all know that attorneys aren't cheap. Just to even consult with one for 1 hour could easily be $300 to $500 an hour, depending on what it is, right? And so when you want to talk about employment law, that definitely is not $100 fee. And so I think that, being in a capitalist society, it is what it is. But I still think that at the end of the day, remember that that person that, you are maybe feeling some kind of way, because we're human too, that they go home to people that love them.
That's right.
You go home to people that love you. And what if someone was thinking, let's just say, not the way you were thinking, but like some people saying that, what if that very thing that you're angry about was then on your doorstep today? How would you then feel about those policies? Are you happy now that that policy exists because you get to benefit, or your family member gets to have their integrity and humanity in place because that did exist? Or are you still thinking the same way, regardless of who that person is? And I'm going to beg to differ. It's probably the latter.
Well, that's such a great point, and that's as we go through that particular scenario, it was, thank God for ChatGPT, by the way. I was, able to really have a conversation with it. And it's
Right.
like, I see the federal one. It's like, oh, well, we're under 50 employees. We don't have to do
Don't count
that.
for me.
Then I look at the state and it's like, oh, 0 to 50 employees. And then, you kind of get into it and you're like, okay, this is a good thing. Cause I think that empathy, that what if it were the other shoe,
Yeah.
really played heavily in me getting over it. But then you get into this whole nother thing where it's like, oh, and by the way, there's an insurance for that. There's an insurance for this. And it's
Yes.
like, come on. Now,
Literally, insurance sells. Like,
insurance sells, it's like, well, if I step on another landmine of something I didn't realize, well, at least I got the insurance, which always also feels like this weird cop out.
it
But
does.
yeah,
I don't disagree with you, but it is necessary in the world we live in. And like as someone who has been a leader at various places, I definitely 1% can say that I empathize with you. I've definitely been there where I had all the good intention in the world. Really, I am, if to know me is, that I have no agenda. I'm not seeking anything. I am all about the people that I am here to support and serve. And there's never any tone or other ulterior motive that's happening in the background. And when you're doing your best, to your point, it does hit a bit different because you're like, I'm not that person. Like, I don't even know how that perception became this person's reality. And at times honestly, I do have to take a step back and try to put myself in their shoes. And we also have to remember that we all come from somewhere, and people are carrying whatever they're carrying too from their previous experience. And as someone who, as a mom to a medically complex child, who has had to navigate, very interesting situations, I can tell you that the trauma is real. When they happen, it can be sometimes very difficult to separate perception versus reality. And working through that, and so we just have to remember that, because we are human, we're not, a monolith. Our life experiences kind of, is cumulative, and that impacts how we see the world.
Yeah, no doubt. And now, okay, so we went real micro
We
into
did.
small business world, my very specific scenario. Now, you had mentioned earlier you're in the DC area, and you said something that I want to ask about. So you were at Capitol Hill recently. Okay, so
Mhm.
all I picture is a building that I think is the right building. And then you were talking about you were there for a maternal,
Mhm.
what was it?
Maternal healthy. Mhm.
Okay, so in real simple terms,
Sure.
what were you there for? What was your role there on that day or that moment?
Yeah. So, another piece of me is I am a maternal health advocate and strategist. I'm also an March of Dimes ambassador, and meaning that my family is a mission family for them, and we share our story to not only raise awareness around, for us in particular, congenital birth defects, but also the importance of having a healthy mom and a strong baby. And quite frankly, where we are in the US and having a whole maternal health crisis, the worst place in a developed country to have a kid is here in America.
So, what specifically does maternal health, a healthy mom, healthy kid? I love
Maternal
that.
health is all comprehensive, all things encompassing the mother. And a lot of times you hear maternal and infant health because they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And that is from the prenatal, perinatal, and post, and ensuring that the mother has all that she needs, not only throughout the pregnancy but post as well. And typically, they say that postpartum is up to the 12 months post having your baby. And so I was on Capitol Hill for an event called It Takes a Village. And it was in partnership with March of Dimes and For Kira for Moms. And Kira's story is, unfortunately, she died. And as a result of being in the hospital, had her baby, about 12 hours later, she kept saying she wasn't feeling well, but she was not believed. And she internally bled out. Yeah. So the It Takes a Village pieces, in the simplest terms, as you said about maternal health, is really humanizing the maternal and infant health experience for all, and really shining a light, unfortunately, on underrepresented communities. And we know that it does not matter how much money a black or brown person makes, that still does not save you from being someone who can have a tragedy and end up passing. And we saw that in a pro track star about a year ago. And we know Serena Williams also was close to the brink of death. We know Beyonce, like we know doctors, like doctors who have passed away.
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
And that is the piece that we are really working to eradicate, and the why, and how do we get to the path for being able to eradicate, because about 80% of maternal mortalities, like of those deaths, they can be prevented.
Okay, so let's talk about Kira for a moment.
Hmm.
Am I saying her name correctly?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so
And
Kira,
Charles Johnson is her husband. He's
I,
the founder of For Cure for Moms.
oh, awesome. Okay, so Kira goes into the hospital, has her child, complains that she just doesn't feel right, wasn't addressed, and ends up passing away. Is that the story?
Yes,
And
yep.
was her scenario, it's certainly not that it should matter, but was her scenario that maybe she was, low income hospital that just doesn't serve low income well? What
No,
was it's a totally quote unquote normal environment for everyone, but somehow the system wasn't prepared to take her complaints serious enough to go for it. Do we have a kind of a notion or an idea of why? Was it, what was it? Was there a why that someone would point to?
implicit bias. Yeah. Her
Implicit bias.
husband, Charles Johnson, who I've followed for years, but actually got a chance to meet him for the first time last week.
Nice. Hell yeah.
He, we were talking about all the things, and he was working to advocate for her, and just to give you kind of, the setup of the story, like thinking about like, oh man, I need to change my clothes before we go to the hospital because you don't want to be seen a certain way. And, overthinking things that like most people don't even think about, but we in underserved communities, we do think about how we're going to show up in the hospital. And his wife like needing to go to be delivered. And I the story is just so riveting. And she died in 2016. And Charles Johnson, what was not said at the time, again, he was just trying to be an advocate for his wife. And what he never used at the time, as all of this is playing out, was that his mother is Judge Hatchett, because he did not want to be seen as if, again, throwing around the carpet. In that moment, that likely would have been so helpful. And like, I mean, his and Kira, like if you just Google like the videos, like she's just so full of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got a chance to talk to him about it last week. I was like, she just looked just so free spirited. She was healthy.
Yeah.
And and to know that she never got to go home with their second child.
Yeah. Okay. So she's there. She's a woman of color.
Hmm.
And that's where maybe some of that implicit bias starts playing in. And
Hmm.
then let's be honest, it's dads of all colors are come in different flavors. Some are really
Right.
aggressive, some are more passive. I'm the guy that's like, "Oh, you'll be okay. No, the doctor knows best." And
Yeah.
so he's stuck in this belt. Also being a man of color, is he going to be perceived as overly aggressive? Is he going to be perceived as, who knows, right? So he
Hmm.
had to walk this balance.
He did. He definitely did. That was the hardest part too. Again, not using his mother's name, because if he would have said that, I mean, it would have just been like, okay, people, let's get what we need to do, right? But I mean, she was in pain like hours and hours and hours. And his story, I mean, it's so powerful. Um, because actually the resident, when it was still on, they actually did a reenactment, like one of the episodes was dedicated to Kira. And it was, when I say riveting, so if for anyone out there, like I know, we're talking about a lot of different things because we're not a monolith. Your personal life bleeds into your professional life. It's just what it is. And when I say one of the most riveting episodes, it was powerful. And then at the time when it was aired, there was a big conversation, like it was a premiere at the March of Dimes headquarters here, and a whole conversation bringing in OB-GYNs. Charles Johnson, he was there, part of the conversation as well. Like he has been instrumental. There's the Kira Johnson's Act as well.
So it got acknowledged.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
there's no debate on whether this was a misjustice of healthcare. This was straight up, everyone knows it. Okay, Kira Johnson. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Everyone.
so not, just because I'm a curious type, did they get some justice? Were they able to, bring action against the hospital, I hope?
I don't, in full disclosure, I don't know the full on, like what ended up happening like with the hospital
Yeah.
itself. What I do know is that because of um Charles' tragedy, he turned his pain into purpose and found it for Cure for Moms. And now he's doing some work around dads, because I know with my husband too, a lot of times dads are kind of pushed to the side in this birthing experience. And they're the first thing that, a doctor or a nurse will say, "Hey, mom, mom, mom." I'm like, my husband did a great job of like, "Hello, hi, I'm here." And he's very much engaged. And I would say that the millennial generation been so transformational. You are starting to see this very much so, a lot of dads very much so hands on, in a way that we have not seen before, at least here in America.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so on that day, you were there to support this cause. You were, out in front. Was at the same time, was there something happening at the Capitol that day? Maybe there was some legislature being discussed, or was this just part of the routine of, hey, we go where lawmakers are so they can just kind of observe this?
Yeah, well, part of it was the Congressional Black Caucus Legislative Conference as well, that was happening concurrently. And usually that's a great opportunity too to get people to come out, like almost like a 2-for-1, because traveling can get pretty expensive too. But making the best of those experiences, and then having either the congressional leaders themselves in these conversations, or their staffers, or their staffers, and also bringing state legislators onto the conversation as well. And so we did have some state representatives from Pennsylvania and Virginia as well, because Virginia just recently passed one of the largest state momnibus in the country, where additional over $7 million dedicated to maternal health, maternal and infant health resources, and then also 12 new provisions added also for the Commonwealth. And it really is related to technology innovation, being able to utilize technology, especially in maternal health deserts. And there are a lot of them outside of Northern Virginia. It gets real rural. And unfortunately, if anybody's been following even just a little bit, there are a lot of rural hospitals that are facing closure or already closed. Yeah, around the country. Does not matter the state. Around the country.
Now, you had mentioned in our pre-talk, you spent some time at X. Is that right?
Before
Twitter?
it was X,
Before is
Twitter 1.0.
Twitter 1.0. Okay. Now, what kind of role were you filling there?
Yeah. So when I left public service, for your audience, when I left the FBI and the US intelligence community as a national security and intelligence leader, I actually pivoted to Twitter, and I was the head of Site Policy America. So I was the head
Side
of a
policy
region.
means what? Side.
Site policy is for safety and cybercrime, was my
Okay.
focus.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so all the things, literally.
Okay. So you were there pre-X. So what kind of years era was that?
Yeah, from 2020 to 2022.
Okay, so 2022. I'm trying to remember. Okay.
Yeah, mhm,
All right. So
yeah,
there is so much said about bots bringing in kind of a polarization of
yeah,
people, just so much negative. Like I never really adopted getting into Twitter. I probably check it 4 or 5 times a year just to see if there's something. It's just like this is just all
same.
nonsense.
Yeah,
I think it could
you're
be a
not
great.
alone.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. I
no,
sometimes feel
about
like I'm left out, but
no, 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 you're not alone. I felt the same. Personally, I thought it was too much for me, too much information. I thought many times it was toxic,
yeah,
all these things, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of it.
yeah, yeah.
It is really to understand what was happening, the intent, the user experience, working with some incredible people that I know there is a lot of conversations around, like, people getting censored one way. That was not what was happening, to be clear. It was if someone was suspended or completely removed from the platform, it was literally because of a violation of the policy. Like, it was very clear, and those decisions, when they were nuanced, were not taken lightly.
Is that
like
right?
like it was literally people like massaging over and over and like having these deep conversations. So it was never, I know there's a lot of rhetoric out there, but I can
Sure.
tell you that the people who are doing the work, creating the policies, enforcing the policies, that this work is not simple, nor is it black or white. Like, a lot of it is very nuanced and coded and like all of these things. And to be the person that has to make that decision is very it's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. And you are in your mind, again, everyone that I had the opportunity to work alongside, they were literally in the space of trying to do the right thing, balancing this freedom of expression while trying to mitigate on and offline platform harm. And what I tell people a lot, though, I was like, the questions that we used to ask always was, freedom for who, safety for who, because we know that in social media platforms that unfortunately the disproportionate harm, doxing, dogpiling typically happens to underrepresented communities, women, journalists, women public officials around the globe. It doesn't even matter. And this idea that, one side versus the other side, it's not even that is what's happening. Like, those things don't even show up in the room. It is literally like my role being in public service. I wasn't Just because I did not like the law doesn't mean I was not abiding by the law, nor was I not enforcing the law and looking at it for what it was. Like, you can have an opinion, but that doesn't mean that keeps you from being objective. And every single person that I had the opportunity to lead alongside, that was the lens that we all operated from. It was really a beautiful thing. I mean, the difference that I bought was understanding from the national security implications of social media platforms.
You used the word rhetoric a moment ago, and I'm not I'm not a critical thinker. Like you tell me that the FBI put pressure on Twitter executives to do X and Y, and I'm like, oh wow, that's terrible. I believe that. And then if someone later in the day says, oh yeah, no, it wasn't like that, I'm like, oh okay, good. Like I have no conviction behind these things, but it's amazing how it kind of sinks into just like my database of like, oh, Twitter, FBI pressure. Like that's just your
Yeah.
proof. But I have no conviction behind it. So it's just fascinating how so much of that just gets read into our brain subconsciously where it's just like, oh, Twitter bad, you know,
Right.
you
Yes,
know,
immediately. And that just not what was legit happening. And yeah, it is just no, the culture inside. I mean, it was a very chaotic place, but I can tell you, like just at a very broad level, the culture was like honestly second to none. Like being able to look back, like in it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a break. I mean, I was working at one point 16, 18-hour days, like around, like it was, oh yeah. Like I onboarded, like literally about 90 days ahead of the 2020
Yeah.
elections, and it was, and then also less than 10 days of my arrival, the big Twitter cybersecurity breach that happened. So that like immediately changed my role. So there was just so many things that were like happening.
So yeah, I remember when, when Elon bought it and he did these layoffs. In my brain, if someone said, "Here, I'll prove it to you," Twitter takes 10 employees. That's it. Keep the servers up. Make sure the bots finding any spam, do that, and a couple sales guys to sell ads. Like I would believe that. Like that's how simple I make it in my head, but it's clearly not.
It's not.
No way. So give us an example, as small or as meaningless or big. You're sitting at your desk, you are in that side policy world, a policy you had to kind of shepherd through, or something, an example of a day in the life, because this is fascinating to me.
Mm. Whew, so many. Let's see, where would I go? Um, So I'll give you like at a broad level. So we one particular policy that we had to like literally write in real time was when the Ukraine Russia conflict broke out. And we were seeing a ridiculous amount of like prisoner of war like images and um photos, and like we knew we did not want to add any additional harm to these people. And we were like, oh my gosh. And so it was like really one of those moments of like, this is happening in real time. We need a policy, which in the modern world, like POW policy, like why would we need that? And having to think on our feet. And so working very closely with our human rights team at the time in really creating a prison of war policy as a result of the Russia Ukraine conflict was a pretty big deal, and like really following the international human rights standards, and also all things like the Geneva Convention, like all these things that like, oh my God. And having to bring that all together to create this policy and move it along at a pretty rapid rate was honestly some of the most humbling work that I got to be a part of as a leader. And working with the people that were, really trying to dig up like what this policy would look like and how we would enforce it, what was the threshold, what we would allow, what we wouldn't allow. And that really took a lot of deep thought, but it was literally one of the most humbling policies.
That kind of gives me chills just thinking about it, because you've got this, it's a humanity issue. It's just,
Yeah.
we don't want to exploit this. We want people to be aware it's happening. And now at that moment, you have this intersection of this team of people, employees, says, "Hey, this is the way it should be." You're naturally going to have a team of people that say, "Well, I don't know. I don't think."
And that's
Keeping that
definitely the conversations. Yeah.
keeping that discussion civil could be, because that's a very emotionally charged issue.
And you got to think about this is a global company. We're U.S.
Yeah.
parent company,
Yeah.
but it's a global company.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
these policies that are created, we have to think about them from a global perspective
Yes.
and not just what the US wants.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So, and then now you got to have kind of like, hey, what's just the foundational natural language expression of what we're trying to say? Now we got to
Mhm.
layer in, the humanity, issues and Geneva Connection stuff. Then we've got to get it over to attorneys. Then we got to get it to programmers who can actually, automate some of the,
Right.
the
You got to
work.
make sure that the policy is being enforced, like the integration of it, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. Oh yeah, I worked alongside product and engineering teams on a regular day by day, and at times too like pushing back on like the lunch of certain features, until we could, be able to trial them, like incubate them to make sure that they were, the features actually didn't inadvertently cause harm. Because again, most of the time, people are, when it comes to innovation, the idea is cool. And I always say it's cool until it's not. And you're just thinking about your big idea and your lived experience and how this is gonna like help or be so amazing for so many people, but not really understanding the nuances of things gone bad, or it's almost like that red teaming
Yeah,
of
yeah,
sorts.
yeah. Okay, let me ask this then. So
Sure,
as we start winding down here,
sure.
so you've got so you're going through this policy, you're working with your team, you're all, give a shit about the issue and you're all being cool. How much in the back of the mind or the front of the mind do you have to say, when we hit submit on this thing, a big percentage of people are gonna just lose their minds over this, and some will be like, "Oh, good, that was really smart," but you're gonna have some haters on
Oh, all the
whatever you
time.
determine. How much does that play into the day-to-day thinking as you're going through this real-time exercise?
Yeah, we're not thinking about the policy was never thought about, and people in this is that's the trust and safety policy of it all. And then also, before AI became like all big and hip around 2023, 24, we were already working with machine learning, LLMs, all those things. And we're not thinking about like, oh, what is this personality person gonna say about this policy or what. No, it is strictly on the objectivity. Again, I have people on my team I knew they did not agree with the policy, but they would say this is the right thing to do objectively. That is what, honestly, as an American, that actually is in many ways what made us beautiful, was that we could have those big discussions and debates, and you could still walk away and be like, "You want to go get dinner?" Now, not so much, right? And so the people inside, that's really what it was. Like, people were like, I mean, passionate about these issues, and it had nothing to do with, red or blue. It was all about the H, literally.
Well, I would not qualify for that job as a pathological people pleaser. I would be so clouded by all the things I shouldn't be clouded by. So thank God there's people like you
That's
and
why
your
you have
team doing it.
people, your sounding boards,
Yeah.
right? Because we're human. We can all get into our own tunnel vision. And that is also why it's great to have diverse perspectives. It's good for business.
Amen. Well, geez. Well, I'll tell you what, gang, we were definitely in the trenches today. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. I certainly enjoyed it. And I sure hope that you'll come and join us again, Erica. That
Yeah,
would be great.
absolutely. If you have me.
Let's see, where can people find you, by the way, out there?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, you can find me at the policy goddess, and that's the Policy and goddess, Goddes. And you can also go to my firm's website. It is www.leadwithinstrategy.ai. And I am on LinkedIn. If you can find me, great. It's Erica S. Initial, and that's it.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for joining. Everyone else, please like, share, subscribe if you think we earned it. We'll have another episode next week and look forward to continuing the conversation, Erica.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.